Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a horror film called Return to Silent Hill. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. It's been 20 years since director Christoph Gans first visited Silent Hill, and now he finally returns to let everyone down. The movie opens with a man named James, who is driving near the mountains at a high speed while smoking a cigarette. He almost crashes into a logging truck, but manages to avoid it at the very last second, and accidentally knocks over a suitcase. This causes all the clothes to go flying across the road, and the suitcase's owner, Mary, is absolutely furious, so James quickly apologizes. He also helps her in repacking her clothes into the suitcase just as a bus arrives for Mary to board. But once again, her suitcase is suddenly dislodged, and all her clothes come spilling out across the ground, which causes Mary to miss the bus. Maybe she should have packed lighter. Feeling guilty, James asks Mary where she is going, and she says to the city, but it's too far away. She then shows him her hometown, which is called Silent Hill, and explains that she now has to head back there since she missed the bus. James decides to give her a ride to her home, but as they are about to leave, a massive thunderstorm suddenly rolls over the town. For a brief, horrifying moment, Mary appears as the corpse of a drowned woman. Then, out of nowhere, James wakes up in the middle of a bar, and that's when we realize that what we just saw was only a memory from his past. He is heavily drunk, so he damages the bar's property and picks a fight with several people. As a result, security drags him out of the bar and throws him into a pile of garbage bags.
Get in there with the rest of this movie.
During this time, James repeatedly receives calls from his therapist, which he reluctantly answers. The therapist is worried to learn that he is drunk, so she asks him to go home and get some rest because they have an appointment tomorrow. Next, James returns to his apartment where we see several paintings of Mary, after which he is struck by a severe headache. He then finds a letter from Mary in which she desperately pleads with him to return to their special place in Silent Hill because something has happened. It's the first time James has ever received anything like this, so without hesitation, he gets into his car and drives to the town. Along the way, he experiences several flashbacks of Mary, in which the two of them appear deeply in love and happy together. After a long journey, James arrives in Silent Hill, and the town looks completely abandoned and covered in ashes. He soon encounters a mysterious woman who asks him to help her carry some sacks. She introduces herself as Angela, the sack lady, and we immediately notice that she looks a lot like Mary. James asks her if she has by any chance known a person named Mary, but the girl says no. She warns him not to go any farther, explaining that the ashes are the result of the fires that began during the summer, while the floods crippled the town's water plant. Because of this, nearly everyone abandoned Silent Hill, and she is certain he will not find the person he is looking for. But James is determined to find Mary, and despite Angela's warning, he decides to move forward.
See you later, Mary. I gotta go find Mary.
You're dreaming, James.
Not dreaming, I'm drunk.
Later, while he is walking through the deserted streets of Silent Hill, he hears music echoing from a tunnel, so he rushes to investigate. At the end of the tunnel, he finds a man sleeping on the floor beside a radio. James approaches and asks if he knows what the hell is going on here, but the man suddenly wakes up in a panic and tells him he has to leave because they are coming. James assumes it's just another crazy guy, so he brushes off the warning and soon heads toward a bar.
Get more drunk.
Upon entering, he realizes that everything is abandoned, and at that moment, memories from his past begin to resurface. He recalls the day Mary brought him there and introduced him to many of the people who lived in Silent Hill. It seems that her father was the one who founded the entire town, and he was highly respected by the locals. In the present, James suddenly hears the man's screams from earlier, so he runs outside to see what's happening. However, he is shocked to find the man lying dead on the ground. When he turns around, he comes face to face with a humanoid monster known as a lying figure. The creature immediately tries to attack James, but he grabs a tool and throws it at the lying figure. Unable to reach him, the lying figure retreats by crawling beneath a car and disappearing back into the sewers. Out of nowhere, night falls, and the most terrifying creatures imaginable begin to pursue him. James runs through the deserted streets of town as giant cockroaches emerge from the sewers and devour everything in their path. He manages to escape them and soon arrives at the apartment building where he and Mary used to live, but it now stands abandoned and decaying. In the distance, he hears her voice, so he follows it all the way to the second floor. At that moment, James experiences a very vivid vision filled with gruesome images of Mary, which causes him intense headaches. He calls his therapist for help and tells her that he can feel Mary calling out to him and that he cannot resist it. However, their conversation is cut short when his phone battery suddenly dies. The therapist becomes extremely worried about him and quickly calls to request a wellness check on her patient. Meanwhile, James ascends to the room above him where he finds a mannequin dressed in Mary's clothing, surrounded by moths and a strange shrine. The sight triggers another memory from the past, and he recalls a time when Mary was visited by around 20 locals during what appeared to be a communion session. They were speaking to Mary cryptically, saying things that James couldn't understand. After they left, James admitted that their presence made him uneasy, but Mary defended them, claiming they were her family, who took her in following her father's death. James also noticed a bizarre shrine dedicated to her father, which Mary quickly hid from view. Back in the present, James finds Mary's admission letter to Brookhaven Hospital and suspects that she might be there. He then encounters a man named Eddie vomiting in a bathroom and asks him if he knows anything about Mary, but Eddie says he has no idea. He adds that there is hardly anyone left in Silent Hill and shows James several blisters covering his body.
Check these out, man.
At that moment, they hear someone crying, so the two men go to investigate. They come across a girl named Laura who is clutching a toy baby and hiding inside a garbage chute. With the rest of this movie, James immediately tries to help Laura, whereas Eddie wants to abandon her and flee. Suddenly, they hear disturbing noises and a creature known as Pyramid Head begins approaching them. Laura quickly retreats to her hiding spot, while an upset Eddie beats up James, blaming him for awakening the evil. He runs away at full speed, and luckily James manages to escape because a gate blocks Pyramid Head's path. Can't cut through that with your big-ass sword, can you, stupid? However, the monster uses its immense strength to begin tearing through the metal bars. Meanwhile, James flees into a nearby room where he finds a mannequin standing motionless. At first, everything appears calm, but the mannequin suddenly transforms into a horrifying headless spider. While hiding inside a closet, James watches as Pyramid Head approaches. The creature soon begins fighting the headless spider, and the brutal battle quickly turns in its favor. In the end, Pyramid Head emerges victorious, tearing the headless spider into several pieces before dragging its remains away. But before leaving the room, Pyramid Head suddenly stops in front of the closet and opens the door. It seems like it's all over for James, but at the very last moment, a deafening sound echoes throughout the building, causing both him and Pyramid Head intense mental agony. Moments later, Silent Hill suddenly returns to its fog-covered state once again, and Pyramid Head is nowhere to be seen. As James emerges from the closet, he encounters Angela again. She tells him that he cannot save Mary, and when he tries to approach her, she defensively raises her knife and demands that he stay away.
I'll cut you.
Outside, James meets Laura once again, and the girl suddenly mentions that the toy she is carrying was given to her by Mary. A shocked James asks where Mary is, but just then, a strange sound begins echoing all around them. Laura suddenly runs off into a huge maze, and James chases after her. However, he quickly loses sight of her within the labyrinth. While searching for Laura, he comes across a blonde woman who bears a striking resemblance to Mary. Her name is Maria, and James tells her that he is looking for his girlfriend, who is probably at Brookhaven Hospital. Maria insists that everyone in Silent Hill has either left or died, but she still decides to accompany him to the hospital. Next, the two of them leave the maze and walk through the streets, but they soon have to run as fast as they can when they encounter several terrifying creatures. Eventually, they reach the town hospital, where James is triggered by more memories from his past. He remembers how one day he noticed several locals leading a terrified Mary through the streets and decided to follow them. He then watched as they took her down into the sewage tunnels. Weird time for James to be remembering their wedding. In the present, Maria finds a tape in the hospital, and upon playing it, it turns out to contain a conversation between a doctor and Mary. The two listen as the doctor informs Mary that she is slowly dying from a poison that has been administered to her by members of the cult. Here, it is revealed that long ago, Mary's father founded a cult, and its members worshipped him. After he passed away, they began worshipping Mary instead and started drugging her, gradually turning her into a vessel for their ceremonies. Through a flashback, we see how James watched in horror as the cult members forced Mary to participate in a ritual in the underground sewers after drugging her. In the present, present, a high-pitched sound suddenly echoes throughout the hospital, and the place begins to collapse. James and Maria rush through the hospital only to encounter several monstrous nurses, one of whom manages to wound Maria. James takes her to safety and patches up her injuries before leaving to continue his search for Mary. Outside, James encounters Laura, who mocks him for abandoning Mary and lures him into a room, then locks him inside. In the room, James discovers a bed hanging from the ceiling, and there is a giant moth-like version of Mary with 4 arms. The monster opens its mouth as if to consume him, while Laura tells James to come back when he is ready. Then, suddenly, James wakes up in Brookhaven Hospital in its normal state, sitting next to his therapist, and he doesn't understand what the hell is going on here. Here, the therapist reveals a shocking truth, telling him that he needs to let go because Mary has been dead for months following their breakup. But James refuses to accept reality because he is convinced that she is still alive somewhere. We then see another flashback in which Mary had returned to their apartment after the ritual, and James confronted her about what he had witnessed earlier. Mary told him that she was forced into it since childhood, and revealed that when they first met, she was actually trying to escape the town. James then begged her to leave Silent Hill with him, but Mary refused for some reason. Heartbroken and angry, James then left on his own after ending their relationship. Back in the present, the therapist speaks with a nurse and reveals that she had been treating James for nearly a year, and that he still hadn't come to terms with Mary's passing. James is looking out the window when suddenly the sky turns red and hundreds of moths cling to the glass, signaling that he has returned to the dystopian version of Silent Hill once again. James finds himself beside Maria, who desperately begs him to leave the town with her, but he ignores her pleas and makes his way toward the basement. Maria follows him into an elevator, and they eventually arrive at a maze-like gallery lined with countless paintings of Mary. She continues urging him to turn back, but James remains certain that Mary is still alive somewhere. He also realizes that Maria is not a real woman, but a manifestation of his own mind. So James calls upon Pyramid Head, who drives a huge knife straight through Maria's body and ends up killing her. Moments later, James suddenly wakes up on the shore of a lake, and in front of him stands a burning building. He goes inside and finds Laura, who asks him to remember Mary's full name. The scene then shifts to a cemetery, where James visits Mary's gravestone and learns that her full name is Mary Angela Laura Crane, or Malk. Laura then whispers something into his ear, and when James opens his eyes, he finds himself standing in a blazing hallway. In one of the rooms, James sees Angela, who is actually a version of Mary, being abused by her father. She tells him that she had tried to escape many times, but something always stopped her. James notices several hands holding her down and desperately tries to help, but the hands drag her beneath a mattress. James falls in after her and lands in a strange place where he comes face to face with a grotesque, morphing creature that bears Mary's face.
Mary, you never looked so hot.
Moments later, the creature suddenly bursts into flames, and James catches sight of Mary climbing onto the hospital roof. He immediately goes after her, but when he arrives, all he finds is a bed. Lying in it is a figure covered by a white sheet, so James cautiously approaches and realizes that it is Mary. A flashback then reveals the tragic truth. Mary had become gravely ill because the cult members had been slowly poisoning her for years. James remained by her side throughout her suffering, but the pain she endured eventually became unbearable. In her final moments, she begged James to end her pain and set her free. He didn't want to do it, but after Mary pleaded with him, he finally gave in and suffocated her to death. In the present, the bed suddenly rises into the air and transforms into the monstrous Moth Mary. James apologizes to her for everything that happened, during which Moth Mary begins to change, eventually turning back into a dead body. Overwhelmed with guilt, James places Mary's body inside his car and drives off a pier into the lake, ending his own life in the hope of being reunited with her. In the final scene, James suddenly finds himself back on the day he first met Mary. He accidentally knocks over her suitcase just like before and offers to help her pick up her clothes. Once again, she misses her bus, but this time, James makes a different choice. Instead of taking her back to Silent Hill, he drives away with her to the city, giving her a chance to start a new life far away from the cult.